When we were young, we dreamed of changing the world. But as we grew up, we realized just not being changed by this world is already a stroke of luck. You were once a brilliant child, a sharp-witted kid, the one who finished assignments early, corrected teachers, and asked questions that left adults speechless. You were praised. You'll do great things. You're different. You have a special gift. But now, you're 25, or 30, maybe 38. And sometimes, on sleepless nights, you lie there wondering, if I'm so smart, why do I feel so lost? Why do I feel lonely? This video is for those who grew up labeled smart, but now feel like they're fading into invisibility. Not because of failure, but because they no longer know, who am I in this world? Let's talk. You were never just a kid. You were the smart kid. That label clung to you like a shadow. You learned quickly, read early, thought deeply. While others were riding bikes, you were pondering the meaning of life. You didn't choose it, but it became your identity, and for a while, it seemed to work. You were always at the top of your class. You avoided shallow conversations. You made adults smile, and your peers keep their distance. Then you grew up, and things started to feel off. Now, you have a job where no one cares how smart you are. You sit through meetings, interrupted by others. You scroll social media, seeing people who aren't gifted living the life you dreamed of. You feel isolated, not because you lack ability, but because the world doesn't run on intelligence. It runs on connection, on vulnerability, on companionship. And that is something you were never taught. No one told you at 10 years old, intelligence doesn't shield you from loneliness. In fact, sometimes it causes it. Meet Jamie. Raised in Boston, always top of the class, loved by teachers, admitted to a prestigious university. But at 29, Jamie felt invisible. She had a tech job, a decent salary, but no close friends. I know how to solve problems, she said, but I don't know how to ask for help. Then there's David, the brightest son in his family, an engineering graduate, expected to be rich by 30. But at 33, he confessed, I feel like I peaked in high school. Now I just exist. This isn't rare. Studies show that many labeled smart as kids tend to face emotional isolation and struggle to build closeness as adults, especially if their identity was built entirely on achievements. Why? Because when you grow up as the smart kid, you're praised for being intelligent, so you fear being wrong. You're told you're different, so you don't dare ask for help. You mature faster than others, so you feel alone. You live in your head but crave connection. The more you're praised for being smart, the harder it is to say, I don't know. I'm scared. I need someone by my side. Gradually, success becomes a mask. You seem fine but feel empty. You get things done but don't feel meaningful. You have hundreds of followers but no one to call at 2 a.m. When was the last time you felt truly understood? When was the last time you dared to be messy, imperfect, not the best? Here's the truth. If you felt that loneliness, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not alone. You're just human. But to break free, we need to understand where it began. The real issue doesn't start when you graduate or get a job. It starts with how you were praised as a child. As a kid, you solved a tough math problem. Adults looked at you, amazed, and said, You're so smart. It felt great, didn't it? But it wasn't just praise. It was a label. And once you wore that label, you started living to prove it. You didn't want to disappoint them. You didn't want to lose that recognition. So you chose tasks you knew you'd ace. You avoided challenges. You didn't learn to fail. You learned to be right, not to grow. Every time you were wrong, it didn't feel like part of the process. It felt like proof that you weren't as smart as they thought. As you grew, that fear took root. You hesitated to ask questions. You feared admitting you didn't know. Instead, you stayed silent, observing, analyzing, pretending to understand. You lived in your head, a place that felt safe, logical, controllable. But that's also where you started to feel lonely. I don't want to be found out as less brilliant than they think. That's the whisper of so many grown-up smart kids. The praise, "you're so smart," seemed like motivation, but in reality, it set a subtle psychological trap. You tied your self-worth to intelligence. You equated mistakes with personal failure. You started believing, if I'm not smart, I'm nothing special, not lovable, not good enough. That's how intelligence, instead of being wings, became a cage. You stopped being a learner. You became someone who had to be right, excellent, perfect. When all you're taught is to be smart, you lose what matters more: the courage to be wrong, the connection with others, the truth that you're worthy of love even when you're not exceptional. We think praise makes kids stronger, but if it's not done right, it only makes them afraid. You don't need to hate your intelligence, but you need to see it shouldn't be your mask. It's just a part of you, not your entire self. You didn't fail by craving recognition, but maybe you've been stuck in a role too long. To break free, you need to relearn something simple. You don't have to be brilliant to be loved. You just have to be you. Here's the biggest mistake I made, and maybe you did too. Growing up, we start shrinking our world. To protect the smart identity, we avoid new challenges. We skip group activities, dodge new hobbies, and steer clear of anything that might lead to failure. You might not realize it, but this traps you in a vicious cycle. A safe circle you built to guard your smart ego, but it keeps you stuck. Think about it. When you only do what you're already good at, when you stay in your comfort zone, your life shrinks. You stop trying new things or pushing your limits. Your world becomes small, familiar, and lonelier. Maybe you've noticed signs of this. You stick to tasks you've mastered, avoiding anything where you might not shine. You dodge failure at all costs, fearing it'll shatter your perfect image. Your life feels smaller, like it's stuck in the same old patterns. Take Thomas Edison, one of history's greatest inventors. Few know he faced countless failures before inventing the light bulb. Edison never let those failures define him as a failure. He understood that failure is essential to creativity and innovation. I once turned down a team project because I feared not being the best stand. I missed a chance to learn and connect. Have you ever avoided something because you feared not being instantly great? Do you see how protecting your smart identity has cost you precious opportunities? You want to stay smart, but your comfort zone narrows, and you miss out on growth. Here's the secret that changed my life, and it can change yours too. I let go of the smart identity I'd clung to for years. Instead of holding on to being brilliant, I started building myself through a willingness to grow, to face challenges, and to embrace failure. Accepting failure isn't a sign of weakness, it's the foundation of growth. As Brené Brown says, vulnerability is the key to unlocking deep connections with yourself and others. When you dare to fail, you discover you're stronger than you thought, and you open up to others more easily. I began trying one new thing a week, from dancing to cooking, each time risking failure, but the freedom, growth, and connection I gained were priceless. Once, a dish I made was a disaster, but I felt joy in trying, and it made me feel more alive, more free. New opportunities and relationships started to bloom. Try something new each week. Don't shy away from things you've never done, even if you're not perfect. Share your small failures with friends. It builds learning and real connection. Sarah, an engineer in Seattle, was terrified of failure and obsessed with others' opinions. But after learning guitar, she met true friends in class who understood her. It changed how she saw herself and connected with the world. Dare to try and fail. When you embrace failure, you'll find freedom and growth you never imagined. Here's another way to break loneliness you need to know. Build real emotional connections. Most of us can understand others intellectually, but true connection requires the heart. We're used to analyzing, finding reasons for everything, but sometimes it's about listening and feeling. Simon Baron-Cohen distinguishes between cognitive empathy, intellectual understanding, and affective empathy, emotional connection. His research shows emotional connection can reduce loneliness by 40%. When you don't just understand but truly feel others, you open the door to deep connection, something raw intelligence can't achieve. Truly listen not just to words, but to emotions, to what's unsaid. Start with small conversations, but your genuine presence makes the difference. Join group activities running, book clubs, or any community, and you'll see real connections come from an open heart, not just a sharp mind. Michael, a programmer in Boston, lived in loneliness for a decade. But after joining a running group, he found a true friend who understood him through shared emotions, not achievements. Since then, he's no longer felt lost, and his relationships have grown authentic. What about you? When did you last feel truly connected? What made that moment special? When you stop analyzing and listen with your heart, you'll feel a stronger connection than ever. Try it today, and loneliness will fade into the past. Imagine living without needing to prove anything. No need to strive to be smart, sharp, or right in others' eyes. Just being you know more, no less. When you let go of the need to stand out, you don't feel failure, you feel relief. It's like setting down a heavy backpack after a long journey. That's when you start living not as others expect, but to your own rhythm. Humans don't belong because they're talented. We belong when we're seen, understood, and accepted, flaws and all. Your loneliness isn't because you're lesser, it's because you've had to seem better. The more you strive for recognition, the further you drift from true connection. You once thought, if I'm not exceptional, who will care? But real care doesn't come from impressing, it comes from sincerity. The first step to belonging is daring to be imperfect, to show up without performing, to let others see your vulnerable side. No one is truly free if they live to please others' image of them. True freedom is not needing to justify why you're worthy of love. You don't need to be the best in the room. Just be real enough to be present and brave enough to let others reach you. People don't connect with you because you're smart. They connect because you're honest. You're not lonely because you're inadequate. You're lonely because you've never been seen the right way. Maybe you believed, if you tried hard enough, you'd stop feeling lost. But striving to be worthy never makes you feel you belong. You don't need fixing. You need to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted. No conditions attached. You're not lonely because you're too different. You're lonely because no one has been patient enough to see the real you behind the mask of intelligence, strength, and success. And maybe you haven't dared to look at that part of yourself either. So, if you're lost, stop trying to prove yourself. Start asking, who am I when I'm not striving? Who can I be honest with without shame? If you don't have answers yet, it's not because you're wrong, it's because no one taught you to connect as a human, not a role. We were taught to stand out, but never taught to belong. So today, choose something new. You don't need to be better, just truer. You don't need to say the right thing, just the thing stuck in your heart. You don't need to impress, just be fully present. What you seek isn't a place, but a feeling. I can be myself and still be loved. If you felt lonely despite being called smart, if you've smiled in a crowd but felt silent inside, know this: you're not alone. There are countless others out there, tired of pretending to be fine. They're waiting for someone to be real, so they can be real too. And maybe that person is you. Changing the world doesn't always start with something grand. It starts with one person daring to say, I see you, I understand you, and I'm still here. If this video resonates with you, hit the like button to spread the spark of connection. Subscribe and ring the bell to join us on this journey. What topic do you want us to explore next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't miss our next video at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Brothers, let's light up the world, starting today.